Today on Hands on Tech, I finally got my hands on the Canon R5 and the Canon R6. Ooh, these are some fancy cameras. But just how different are they from each other? And does that price really justify it? Stay tuned. I can't wait to talk about it.
This is TWiT.
This episode of Hands on Tech is brought to you by SanDisk Data Storage Solutions. Check out their iXpand flash drive LUTs or Ultra Dual Drive LUTs today and get 15% off your first order of the featured SanDisk products at sandisk.com/hot. Well, hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Pruitt, and this is Hands on Tech here on TWiT TV. I hope y'all are doing well. I'm unbelievable as always, and I'm excited to be able to sit here and share today's content with you because I finally got my hands on those hot new cameras from Canon. I have this one here, and I have this one here, and I say finally, because quite frankly, it's been pretty hard trying to get my hands on one of these new Canon cameras. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the new mirrorless cameras from Canon, the Canon R6 and the Canon R5. These things have been pretty popular one way or another. I guess you can say they've been pretty famous and infamous, depending on the news cycle that you read at the time of release. But I was able to get my hands on them thanks to the folks at lensrentals.com for allowing me to loan these out and borrow these and use them for my review and give them a bit of a rundown and take a look and just see how well these cameras are performing and if they live up to all of the hype and things of that nature. So let me get something out of the way here. There's a whole lot of tech specs and stuff like that that's already been discussed about this camera. If you're a fan of the TWiT network, you probably know the specs ins and out regarding the Canon R6 and the Canon R5. So I'm not going to dive too deep into that. But what I did want to discuss is just the actual real world capabilities of these two cameras. And quite frankly, I don't think these cameras are for everybody. I don't think the R5 is for everybody. I don't think the R6 is for everybody, but I do think one may have a better value, if you will, depending on your use cases and your scenario as far as your content creation goes. All right, so let's go ahead and just do a real quick rundown of the spec sheet. Okay, so first we have the EOS R5 versus the R6. The R5 shoots in video format. You get HD, you get 4K, you get 8K. The R6 gets everything except 8K. You get autofocus in points of 1053 on either one of these. Both of these are using the Digic X processor. The electronic viewfinder, when looking through to compose your shots, you're going to get a slightly better resolution on the R5's viewfinder, but I'm serious, it's slight, not that much. Now the big kicker, the megapixels. That's what most people are concerned about regarding their cameras. The R6 comes in with a 20.1 megapixel sensor versus the R5 having a 45 megapixel sensor. And then the other specs, all of the mechanical and electrical shutter stuff. I'm not going to get into that, but I will discuss weight on these. The approximate weight of these are pretty negligible, close to one another. I will say, just from holding one in my hands versus the other, I can feel a bit of a difference when holding the Canon R5 in my hands versus holding the R6. The R5 is definitely a little bit heavier. Now, pricing of these beautiful things. The R5 is going to clock in for the body only at about $3,800 just for the body. You get the R6 body at about $2,500. So if you look at them on the screen, these things look pretty daggum similar. I mean, just the size, the design of it, the grip feels pretty similar. The only difference you're going to have on it is this LCD screen on the top versus the R6 does not have an LCD screen. And quite frankly, I'm not missing it either way. I shot for a little while just strictly using the R5, and I can probably count on 3 fingers how many times I looked at this LCD screen. for for actual shooting purposes. And the dial knob over here on the R6 is totally fine. It's a little bit more of the old school way of doing things on camera settings and whatnot, and it works just fine. But everything else is pretty identical. You still have a joystick on the back of these. These joysticks are used to help with your autofocusing. And might I mention, the autofocusing system on these things are outstanding, allowing you to do a facial tracking and autofocusing on the eye of a human, even autofocusing and tracking animals. Like if you want to take a picture of your pet, it'll lock on to your pet and track the pet's eyes to keep them nice and sharp. And if you don't want to do that, you can use your thumb to work with the joystick here on the back and track autofocus manually yourself. Or with the magical powers of mirrorless technology, you can do the same on the back of the screen. If I wanted to turn this on, let's see if I could probably show you. I'll turn on this R5 and just do a bit of a dummy shoot. And if I wanted to just tap on the screen and focus, I probably can do that. I don't know if you can see it on this camera here. Yeah, you can see it a little bit. So right there, you see the little reticule. And if I had this up to my eye and was looking at something and tracking something, I can move this around just like I would with the joystick. Super duper convenient feature. And that's just not a Canon thing. That is just, you know, the technology of mirrorless. So let's take a look at some real world scenarios. First, we'll look at video. Most people are wanting to have 4K video for whatever product that they're putting out, whether it's just a short film, whether it's a vlog or things like that. 4K just flat out looks better. I'm not against shooting in HD because done right, you can properly upscale your HD footage to look like 4K. It's not going to be as crispy, but it's still going to look pretty good. But you do have the capability to shoot both 4K on these cameras. These are hybrid cameras. One is not a strictly video camera. One is not a strictly photo camera. These are both considered hybrid camera bodies. So you have to take that into effect. They're not going to be perfect on either aspect of it. Okay. They're going to be pretty good on the photography side. I will say that, but I'm not going to tell you to expect perfection from the video standpoint. One of the quirks that really bugged me is on the top. They both have these little quick hitter record buttons. So if you're working on a composition or whatever and decide, okay, I want to go ahead and shoot some B-roll of this little scene right now, sure, you can tap that button, it will start recording. The problem is it doesn't necessarily use the settings that you already had predetermined for your video settings. If you were shooting, say, at 60 frames per second in 4K, it might bump it down to 30 frames per second by default, and that could really ruin your shot depending on what that shot is. I wish it just worked with whatever settings that you already had stored in memory when you hit that little quick record button. Maybe that's something that can be fixed in a firmware update. I don't know. Canon will probably let us all know very soon. Once you get this 4K footage, it is going to be a beast on your computer because you're able to shoot this in a really high quality. You're able to shoot 422 10-bit video. So that's a lot of data for your computer to really try to process and crush through, because it's great for editing, but previewing, definitely make sure you're doing some type of transcoding on it so your computer can handle it. For example, I like to use Adobe Premiere Pro and run it through a media encoder so I can set up proxy files and look at it as a ProRes high quality video to do my post-processing on it. And when you're done post-processing, it's going to be beautiful. Shooting in Canon log is a flat profile, so it allows you to really push the dynamic range. It allows you to really push the contrast and the colors. And even if you want to add certain lookup tables to it to just make your video stand out, this is going to give you that. But it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you some work on your computer. It's going to cost a lot of cycles and horsepower. So just be mindful of that. Some people can shoot video with a lower quality and be totally fine. Shooting in HD is probably an easier and more faster way to go. Your mileage may vary on this, but quite frankly, both of these cameras shoot the same thing other than the 8K. That's the only difference between these two. One shoots 8K, the other one does not. The R6 gives you beautiful video footage in 4K, just as the R5 does. So now from a photography standpoint, people are going to be pretty wound up about checking out megapixel specs for their cameras. You hear it in marketing all the time. With the R5 having 45 megapixels, that's a big number. But let me tell you something, folks. The sensor in these things, they're the exact same size. They're full frame sensors. So you're getting a lot more pixels to work with inside of that R5 versus the R6 at 20 megapixels. But okay, so what exactly does that mean? Now you have to look at the photosites of this, the pixels, that's what the photosites are. These photosites are going to be a lot smaller on that R5 versus the R6. And people are failing to forget that a lot of your famous photography out there for like National Geographic, Sports Illustrated, a lot of those big fancy brands out there in ads, they're shooting with a Canon 1DX model, which is using the same sensor that's inside of these, which is also shooting at 20 megapixels. So 20 megapixels is not something to just sort of roll your nose up at, because it's totally fine. You have to look at it's on a full frame sensor, and these pixels are going to be just a touch bigger to be able to absorb plenty of light and give you beautiful images and beautiful images with a little less noise to battle with. This episode of Hands on Tech is brought to you by SanDisk. Finding a data storage solution that is compatible across all devices can be a challenge, but not anymore, thanks to SanDisk's easy-to-use data storage solutions. Their 2-in-1 flash drives are the perfect way to back up and transfer your files to other devices. And no matter what device you have, SanDisk has you covered. For Android users with a USB-C port, the Ultra Dual Drive LUTs allows you to seamlessly transfer data from your devices to your computer. And the iXpand flash drive LUTs makes it easy to transfer data between your iPhone, iPad Pro, Mac computer, and USB-C devices. Even Android phones with automatic file backup as soon as you plug your phone into the drive. I've enjoyed using the Ultra Dual Drive LUTs by plugging it into my camera and recording directly to the USB-C drive connection. Super duper fast and super duper convenient. Trust us, SanDisk offers the best solution for backing up and transferring your data. And right now, you can get 15% off your first order of the featured SanDisk products, but only when you go to sandisk.com/hot. That's sandisk.com/HOT. So what I have here, because of the pandemic, I'm just going to say I haven't been comfortable going out and trying to make new clients here in Northern California. I'm the new guy here, and this pandemic has been pretty interesting, and I don't necessarily have the heart to go out and just meet these brand new people here in the area. So I've been spending a lot of time shooting at home, shooting inanimate objects in the house, as I've discussed on Hands-On Photography, as well as just shooting images of the family and our pets. And right now, I wanted to test out the animal autofocus and animal eye autofocus and tracking with Little Biscuit. Figured he'd be a pretty good example because he's a white dog and I'm shooting outside, and it'll be nice and contrasty, and it should be able to lock on fairly quickly. And as you see here, I have about 9 shots, and if I just sort of track through them, he's going to be moving fairly quickly, because I don't know a little puppy that doesn't move quickly, and the camera just locks in pretty good. That shot is a little soft on the focus, but the exposure is okay. This one is even better. Yeah, and this one here, like shot 8 or 7 or so, this is pretty sharp. I haven't done any post-processing on it, and it just looks pretty good. Nice job with the animal eye focus, and all of that was shot with looks like these were shot with the Canon R6 according to my EXIF data here. Okay, the next shot here. This is a image that I was able to do a little bit of post-processing on. There's a park not too far from here, from my home here. And oh my gosh, I can't wait to go back and plan some sunset shots here. And I took both of the cameras with me this time, and I shot the same frame. And listen, I'm not even going to say which one is which. I'm just going to show you the two frames here. So this is frame 1, and this is frame 2. Frame 1, frame 2. Okay. Now, looking at these, they are pretty dadgum similar. They just are. The only difference you're going to find is when you start doing some pixel peeping. This is the Canon R5's version. This is the Canon R6 version. Let me switch over to my develop module, and it'll give us a little bit of a better view. So we'll go here like so. So this is the R5. And then this is the R6, and it should render out fairly quickly there. So again, it looks pretty similar. So if I zoom in on the R6, I'm going to notice it's not as crispy, but I am zoomed in at 200%. No one is going to be zooming in this tight on your images if they're up for a large print. It's going to look good as a large print at 20 megapixels. So if I go over to the R5, I'm going to zoom in on this one, and you'll see it's definitely more detail. Heck, there's even a little bit of fringing right there. Just trying its best here to give us all of the data. It's a beautiful image from both of these. But again, what's the value here? Does this image mean that it is $1,500 better than R6? And then you have to think about the fact that this is a larger image file to work with. Mind you, these were both post-processed with the raw files, so they were huge files, and your computer is going to have to work hard on a 40 megapixel image. So you have to consider that kind of stuff. So is that worth $1,500 extra? I don't think so, folks. So let's move on. I have a couple more images here to share with you. All right, so this shot here, this one is just a standard studio session here. I set up a couple lights just to play around and see how it looks. And yeah, looks good. It should look good. It's 45 megapixels with a lot of data to work with, and it looks really good. So now this one is also in the same scenario, but I'm shooting with the R6. Still looks good. Good lighting, lots of data to work with. The skin, if I zoom in on it, skin looks great. Very, very sharp details with the eyes. Looks good. Let's move on to another shot here. This one is also with the R6. Low light, but I have just a bit of a kicker light back there on her hair and her face. And I'm still getting beautiful detail on the skin. Now, none of this has been processed. This is all just straight out of the camera. And again, that's with a 20 megapixel R6. $1,500 worth it? Yes or no? I'm leaning more towards the no on this. And lastly, I'll take a look at some images of the hardhead here. This is our youngest hardhead, and this is with the Canon R5. Pretty good detail, studio setting. It's pretty hard to mess that up. You know, I got the optimal settings and everything. Same thing with the R5. Lower light, just like the previous shot, and beautiful, amazing detail with this 45 megapixel camera. Just look at that. You can definitely tell he's a teenager because he does not have the perfect skin just yet. He definitely has teenager skin. Lastly, these are with the R6. Pretty good detail, plenty of lighting. Because if you got plenty of lighting, most shots can look really good if you know how to lock your focus and get everything properly composed. Low lighting. Wow, beautiful. And this is zoomed in at 200%. So yeah, this is just, I don't know. I don't know. When these cameras were announced, I was sort of on the fence as far as the way I'd like to go with these. And I will be honest with you, there are situations where I would need the extra megapixels. So personally, yes, I would lean towards having the Canon R5 in my pockets or in my backpack for usage. I love how this camera feels. The weight is just a little bit heavier than the other, but is not substantially heavier. But that extra data from the megapixels would be useful in certain scenarios that I'm going to need, but not all, but certain scenarios that I am going to need from a professional standpoint. But I am not knocking this R6. I'm not knocking this thing at all. This is clearly capable of creating great images. And I know someone has been pretty open about their experience with it. Mr. Scott Kelby, he had the R5 and sold it and decided to go with the R6. He actually wrote about it on his blog, and all of his points makes perfect sense. If push come to shove and all I had to do was get the R6, all I could do was get the R6, I would get the R6. But for the things that I have in mind with some of the work that I'd like to do, I'm probably going to need some more megapixels to work with, some more data to work with, and being able to really, manipulate large files like that is going to make my job a little bit easier. So I would opt for this. Is it worth an additional $1,500? Nope. It's not. I think that's just another spot where Canon dropped the ball. They dropped the ball with marketing this as a 8K video camera when it's more of a hybrid photography / video camera. And I think they dropped the ball with the pricing on this being an additional $1,500 when you look at the quality that is coming out of the R6 camera. So my recommendation to most of you that are watching this show, as well as watching Hands-On Photography, based on the things that you all have sent to me and told me about how you're shooting, if this is a camera to upgrade to, it would be the R6. If there's a camera for you to upgrade to, it would be the R6 of these two. I wouldn't recommend you all updating to the R5. Not most of my Hands-On Photography listeners. All right. Okay. I got that out of my system. I'm so glad I've been able to play with these things. Now I need to get ready to send these things back to the folks at Lens Rentals. Thank you again. Let's check them out, lensrentals.com. I really do appreciate them setting me up with these devices, because they are hard to get. If you go to try to order the R5 right now, depending on where you look, it's not available. It's not in stock. It's just a popular device and people are buying it up, not to mention supply chain issues with COVID-19. It's a hard device to get your hands on, and lensrentals.com really did set it up for me. And I've used them in the past to work on some jobs before. Super duper simple, super duper easy process for me. Shout out again to them. All right. So folks, that's going to do it. Which camera are you going to get into? Would you take the R6 or would you take the R5, or is this another camera that you have in mind? Leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts on these devices, and stay tuned for some more awesome content here on the network. I have a couple other cameras to review, and I can't wait to share my experience with you. Now, safely create and dominate, and we'll catch you next time here on Hands on Tech. Take care.
Keep up with all the hottest tech news and gadgets. Visit twit.tv. There you'll be able to find and subscribe to all our tech shows. Thanks for watching Hands on Tech.